Thanks for staying with us. So over the weekend, the federal government announced the indefinite suspension of Twitter's operations in Nigeria, according to the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. The suspension was due to the persistent use of the platform for activities that are capable of undermining Nigeria's corporate existence. Joining us now on the show is a youthful and vibrant legal practitioner, Adebayo Razak. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, good to have you. You can also call us on 081-270-53687, 091-390-76948. You can also tweet us from heaven.
We are no longer tweeting at this moment.
My brain does it. So you can now comment on our Facebook.
Yes, our Facebook is TVC Connect. I will read your comments. So go to Facebook.
Imagine that. My brain does.
You need to cut it out. You need to cut it out.
You can no longer tweet to us at. Okay. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Razak. It's always good to have young people have a conversation on this. Now, everybody obviously was shocked to get this information from the federal government saying that we're indefinitely suspending Twitter. And obviously, everybody has responded, even the US, Canada, I think EU, and a few other global organizations have come forward to say this was a wrong move. In fact, NESG also said that this was ill-advised. And people have been talking about all the various effects of this ban. But let's start in your own view, understanding Twitter. Some have said the toxicity of Twitter streets is you can't compare it anywhere else. Was it the right decision at the time for the federal government to make this ban, in your view, considering how toxic Twitter have been in the past?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, what I would say is that the federal government's action was more of a reactive action than a proactive one. And that explains why it has attracted a lot of criticism, even from the international community, when you talk about international politics and all that. They're saying this and that, suppression of fundamental human rights to expression and so many other things. We've seen the president of the small and medium-scale enterprises coming also to explain the adverse economic effect of this ban on particularly the small and medium-scale industry. The National Economic Summit Group has also come to say, look, the digital economy of Nigeria is suffering a major setback. Talked about things like unemployment. The legal personnel has also come in to say, look, this action is by and large illegal, and that there was a better way for this to have been achieved. And I also want to agree with all this, respective states and non-state actors who've said that, clearly the federal government's action, it's not the best at this time that we are in right now. Go ahead, please.
Nigeria is a sovereign nation, and,
yes.
and Twitter is a corporation registered in the US, and they pay their taxes abroad. Yes. And they have so much power. We've seen it tested during hashtag #EndSARS. We've seen it tested with the promotion of everything IPOP. And I mean everything, every obscene things that you can hardly believe. Imagine false news and all of that going unchecked except until reported on Twitter. So do you think that the federal government should answer to a corporation, not even registered within its shores or even paying taxes here? Should we be subject to such an arrangement as a sovereign nation?
Well, I think that when you talk about the sovereignty of Nigeria, I think that there is not single corporate entity or individual who should, by any means or for any reason, trump over the sovereignty of the country. I do agree with that. I mean, for example, in Uganda now, there's what you call social media tax in Uganda, where you find the government putting in place certain parameters to allow social media operators such as Twitter and the rest of them, maybe through their virtual private network, through the Ministry of Communication and Information, whereby you can regulate activities, either for the purpose of tax. You can also find in extreme places like maybe Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria, and the rest of them, who have also taken out measure in order to protect their national sovereignty and their corporate existence, placing some level of restriction on this, platforms, maybe for political reasons, some for religious reasons. And you've also seen it maybe a place like China. But what you find is this, that, wherever this is taking place, for example, the case study of China, whether you have these restrictions, you also have provisions, or you also have the level of technological advancement that such countries also carry in order to be able to bridge the gap between an external introduction and an homegrown facility that can serve the same purpose, either economically or otherwise.
We don't have
and I want us to remember something, that this administration particularly, things that we have always enjoyed through the classic media platform like the TV and the newspaper, in democratic governance, such as media chats and the rest of that, have been totally absent in this administration. And Twitter, a platform like Twitter, has served as the best alternative for government to reach out to the people and for the people to reach out to one another amongst themselves. And so I personally believe that at the point where that happened, it was more of the person of the president that was not happy with the position of that corporation rather than Nigeria as a country. And if we want to base the argument on the fact that, the effect of Twitter and the NSAS movement, I'll quickly say this, that the panels of inquiry are still ongoing. Facts and evidences are still being brought forward.
Right.
Discussions are ongoing, and that we must not put the cat before the horse.
Okay, so my own is, this has happened. Twitter deleted the comment, and we felt, and the presidency and the office of the president felt that it was wrong to have done that. I was of the opinion that the president could have excused himself from Twitter. After all, I would have thought he would say, see, going forward, all correspondence, all pronouncements and announcements coming from the office of the president or the presidency would be gotten through this other channel or our website, so that we can keep the integrity of the message to Nigerians instead of via Twitter. After all, Twitter is not in the constitution that we must use it. Yeah. And the president has the right to either be on it or not be on it. Is that something that could have been done? Has it been done before? Yeah. And Nigerians know that, okay, when we want information from the presidency, this is where we go instead of Twitter.
Yes. I will draw a simple case study to the case of Donald Trump in the United States. And this was exact statement. After the looting, then would come the shooting. And Twitter is a private platform. And there are rules and regulations on this platform. If you're going to enjoy the benefit of something, you must also walk by the rules of that particular platform. Immediately, Donald Trump did what? His account was also suspended while being the president of the United States of America and as the president of the free world. And he found an alternative. It wasn't an offense against the government of the United States. It was an issue between a private platform and the person of Donald Trump. And the presidency must know that, if they've enjoyed the benefits of the outreach, either publicity for their programs and policy, and they've been able to curry, a lot of fans and followership through Twitter, whenever you engage on that platform and you're not playing by the rules, you should expect that such a thing would happen. And it also brings us back to that position where we ask ourselves as public office occupiers that, what action do we take that begins to represent the fact that this is suppression of human rights or suppression of, rights of expression, of, political intolerance and the rest of it. And the president must be very careful so that in taking decisions or going in certain directions, that those actions are not communicated as it is now to the international community, to the economic sectors and the rest of us, to citizens, that this is not the right thing to do.
Let me go on a quick break. When we come back, we continue this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. We still have our legal practitioner, Mr. Adebaya Razak, with us. I had a question before the break. Go ahead.
Okay, so I realize that there are many countries that have successfully created a structure to limit the powers or limit the abuse, let me put it right, the abuse of social media, because we can agree that many people have taken this freedom of speech a bit too far and spreading lies consistently, causing major mayhem across the world. But our country's reaction was very reactionary, and it speaks wrong to our ability to maintain the rule of law. And when somebody is hurt or uncomfortable, a policy can be changed, which would also reduce the level of trust international investors would have in our ability to maintain our sides of the arrangement. And I want to give you an example of, example of how India went about this, because India also had issues with Twitter, and they created a law. And Twitter gave, India created a law that signed into law a management system that every social media should put in place, and gave a time frame of 3 months for them to effect that system. And if they didn't effect the system, which happened in May, they were going to be banned. But there was like a thought towards the process, a law to back it up, which is why Nigerians are asking that, please, on what basis would our Attorney General try Twitter users? Like, as a lawyer, what's the law backing the prosecution of Twitter users? Is there a law banning Twitter? And is there a law that they would use to prosecute Twitter users that are using VPN?
All right. In respect to the position of the Attorney General, I mean, with due respect to his person and his office, I would say that the Constitution is clear. Nothing is an offense in Nigeria except it's prescribed by law, and the punishment thereof, also prescribed. But however, we can quickly draw our mind to, the criminal code. I think Section 50 and 51 talks about sedition. And, sedition basically is saying that publishing materials that are capable of inflaming, creating crisis, inciting the public against the government. But the problem and why the Office of the Attorney General has not referred to that law, or in all that's been said in respect to regulation of social media, that particular law has not been referred to. Now, it has to do with the judgment. I think it's Otto Nwako against the state. And it had to do with when Chief James Iwodo was a governor of a state, and this particular person had published articles, that the state considered as inciting or insulting or capable of inflaming. And, he was sentenced to a year imprisonment. But there was an appeal at the Court of Appeal, and that judgment was overturned. And the basis of overturning that judgment is this, that the law of sedition, or that talks about publication of things that are considered to be inflammatory within the society or causing unrest, that those laws are primitive to democratic practice. And that as long as we are in the dispensation of democracy, that the government must be willing, the government must also be open-hearted to criticism, dissenting opinions, and that even the law on sedition itself provides that as long as what is considered to be sedition is done in the interest of pointing the governor or the president to an ill-doing or to a misnomer or a maladministration within the context of that democratic practice, that can no longer be known as sedition. So what the law is basically saying is that in democracy, if something is wrong, the power belongs to the people. The people has the responsibility of the utmost responsibility of check and balance within the society. They must be able to call for accountability from the government. The government must be willing and transparent enough to give the people a sense of belonging in governance by ensuring that when they are checked, they are not vindictive about it, and that democracy is not dictatorial, or is it a suppressive regime?
So let me ask you, this is a personal view now, your personal view. So do you think our democracy is mature enough? Because we've seen this play out in other countries where people incite. We've seen what happened during Donald Trump's time. You could see there were various factions of different people, people on this side, on that side, you either left or on the right side. And somehow they were still able to come over that and agree at some point. But our democracy is such that, do you think it's mature to the point where people are actually given that full right? Because I question, yes, we want a democracy, but if you are easily ticked off by people's dissenting views, then it's not a democracy anymore. So how do we begin to mature this democracy such that the leaders we have can understand and have that maturity to know that people would have dissenting views.
Right, the person that should be speaking up for the people at the National Assembly. And I'm wondering how quiet they have been concerning this.
Thank you very much. I said this. I mean, I always say it wherever I get the opportunity to say that. You see, in democracy, you have politics and then you have governance. And there's a clear, distinct line between what is governance and what is politics. You know, politics is what you go to the ballot box to do. After that process is complete, what is left is governance. And so the Nigerian political class must come to a place where they understand that governance is all-encompassing. And that in governance, you know, the biggest check, the biggest, you know, responsibility is to the people. And I would like to re-echo our position in respect to the legislative institution. The legislative institution is that institution that's supposed to drive either the direction or the development of democracy in any institution, in any political space, because they are the conscience of the people. I mean, they have the responsibility and the power of the people to act within a democratic setting. And they are supposed to safeguard the excessive use of power, of political power by the executive class. It's basic knowledge. Executive make the laws. The executive execute the laws. The legislature make the laws. The judiciary is supposed to enforce. But when we have in our politics an executive that makes the law, enforces the law, then that's a destruction of the concept of democracy. And that's why we must come back to this position where we say, now, the federal government or the executive government cannot by any means, if he has a problem with anybody in the community or in the society, they must also go to the court to establish their rights or to get justice where that is necessary and not take laws into their hands.
Let's put issues out there clearly. The president had tweeted, and some people didn't like the use of language.
Yes.
And you know, it was criticized, and days after, it got to Twitter taking it down. People you know, reported his tweets.
Yes.
And what's his name? Adamu Garba, speaking on behalf of the president.
Adamu Garba,
speaking on behalf of the president was like, you know, the Nnamdi Kanu's tweets are more inciting, and they've been out there. Nothing has been done by Twitter to them, and you know, there are checks. Let's understand how Twitter gets to take down the tweets. Do we need to report every tweet that is taken down? Do they have language flag off that, you know, that helps them take down certain words? What exactly happens to tweets getting down?
We're going to break. When we come back, we'll look at that. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your view will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So before the break, Nima had asked a question concerning how this works. Would you like to respond to that?
In respect to this particular case study, this is how it works on Twitter now. You have an account with Twitter. You put on an information there. Now, let's remember that, you know, there's a back end. And this is what happens there. There are policies on that platform that talks about what one can do and one cannot do on the platform. For example, things that could be offensive on the basis of religion, on the basis of culture, or even on the basis of humanity generally. And so there are keywords that are on the back end that once you put them in, it flags up immediately. That's one level of check. The second level of check is this, that don't forget that this is globalization, is a community of people or a community of businesses interacting on one platform or virtual platform. And so most times you are either sending out a message to a group of people or to an individual. And so people who view that message or receive that message also have capacity to report that message as being inciting or offensive, either on the basis of culture,
but that's where
religion.
The issue is, because I know, sorry to cut you, that's where the issue is, because I think we must also acknowledge that some of these things are flawed. Because we've seen, I think it was a blogger, I think it was Sunday or Kunle, that people came out together and reported a certain post. so many times that he was flagged and he lost his page. This happened to a few celebrities where people just have this vendetta against you and report before you know it, they pull it out. So their system also is flawed such that if people can just maliciously come up with something against someone, they can do that and pull, and then it flags it.
But they also have a system to report. You know, if your post was unlawfully brought down, you can write a mail to the company and appeal what has been done. Our government didn't follow the due process, but decided to react to the situation without following.
They could have fixed that problem.
They could have fixed that problem. They could have followed what India did, which is create a law. India created a law and said, both Facebook and Twitter must have an Indian office with an Indian representative, someone that they can talk to as a government if they feel something is wrong there. That is a process. That is where the government wants to solve the problem. There's this guy called Farouk Kwarogi. I really want to read him. He said you can ban Twitter, or you cannot ban rebellion against injustice. That Nigeria isn't dysfunctional or insecure because of social media. It is dysfunctional and insecure and totally perilously on the brink because of the government's inability to bring us together.
Hallelujah.
So it's not by banning, it's by gathering us together.
This, but I think I'll let you have the final words on this because we have to run.
I want to round up with a position, and I believe that, you know, Twitter itself is a means, it's not the end in itself. And it's merely a platform. And it can adopt itself into be a social political platform. It can be a social economic platform. It can even be a social cultural or ethno-religious platform. So it's the different users who then bring their views and establish it or communicate it through the medium of Twitter. And what my own simple advice to the government would be is this, that while we believe that the corporate existence of Nigeria is very sacrosanct and must be protected at all costs, because I also believe in one Nigeria. However, in respect to this particular matter, the government must find a people more oriented approach to solving this problem. And they must again reassure the people that this is not about suppression, this is not about public abuse of trust or of office of power, this is not about intolerance, that they are genuinely interested in Nigerians and not themselves.
Right. Thank you very much. We have to wrap up. In addition to the people-oriented approach, it must be the people-oriented people. Because the way you say it, who you say it, and how you say it is also very important. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much.
Let's go on a quick break. When we come back, we have another guest. Stay with us. We'll be right back.